Welcome to PHT in the Morning with your host, Pastor David Miller from the Pentecostal Holiness Tabernacle in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Good morning, this is Melissa Cornett. I am filling in for my dad, Pastor David Miller, and we're going to talk a little bit about something this morning. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. Several years ago, my daughter, Chelsea, and I went on a mission trip to Tonga. And on this mission trip, we really didn't know anybody. We had just heard of people in Tonga. We didn't know even where Tonga was on a map. And if you look, a lot of maps don't even show Tonga. But if you do look for one, and you look in the South Pacific, it's in what's called the Polynesian Triangle. So you have Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji. And so it's far away. And our daughter, Chelsea, had a burden to go to Tonga after meeting some people from there in Hawaii. And so we got all ready to go, and we had some friends that the man, Brother Tui Faliofa, is actually from Tonga. So he was telling us that once we get there, he'd like for us to go visit his family and speak to them and witness to them about Jesus. So our first stop, once we get to Tonga, was going to be to visit the Faliofas. And it took us about 2 days to get to Tonga after flying long layovers and finally getting there. It was in the middle of the night there. I don't know what time it was here, but it was late. And we slept for a few hours. We got up. We walked about 1.5 miles or 2 miles to the bus station. I never ridden on public transportation before this, except for a school bus. But I didn't think it would be that hard, so we moseyed along down to the bus station. When we got there, it was just these buses that looked kind of rough. Some of them looked like they were held on together by duct tape and bungee cords. And if you stepped on them, they was all going to fall apart like a Lego bus. And when we finally found the one that was going to where we was going. And the place that we wanted to go to was called Kalanga. So when we got on the bus to Kalanga, in the capital, we was in the capital town of Nuku'alofa, and we got on the bus, and there wasn't many that got on the bus at the beginning, but by the time that we had just went, I don't know, just a little bit a piece down the road, the bus driver kept stopping and picking up people as we went. They'd just be on the side of the road, wave, and he'd stop. And of course, if we knew that, we wouldn't have walked 1.5 miles to 2 miles to the bus stop. We would have waited for somebody to pick us up, but we didn't know that, so we walked. And so it got more full and more full. And pretty soon, it was so packed on that bus. People were standing up and down the aisles. They were hanging out where there should have been a door, but there wasn't. There were people hanging out the door holding on. And it got so crowded, people was starting to get in, and they was sitting on people's laps. So we didn't know if people knew the person of the lap they were sitting on, or if they just saw an empty lap and sat down. So just in case they just saw empty laps, we took our backpacks and put them on our laps so nobody would sit in our lap. And so we drove quite a while out of Nuku'alofa, probably about 1.5 hours or so out of the city. And we started getting a little nervous because we never saw Kalanga and no one seemed to speak English in Tonga. And we didn't speak Tongan. And so we just started asking people, I would turn around and say, Kalanga, next stop, Kalanga, next stop. Nobody would speak to me. And so finally, our daughter, Chelsea, got in her backpack and she had packed up candy to take on the trip just to hand out to kids or whatever when we went to churches. So she got her bag of candy out. She started passing out Tootsie Rolls. So while she passed out Tootsie Rolls to everybody. I mean, even the adults was taking the Tootsie Rolls. So whenever we went a little bit further, probably another 20 minutes or so, and finally, there was a lady sitting behind me. She tapped me on my shoulder and she said, "Kalonga, next." So here I am thinking, wow, we should have got these Tootsie Rolls out when we first got on this bus, because now people knows how to speak English since they've eaten a Tootsie Roll. So that's your first little piece of advice on this podcast today. Take Tootsie Rolls whenever you go on a foreign mission trip, because you'll never know when you need somebody to talk English. So finally, we get to stop. And this is how it was told to us about finding the Faliofas. And if by some chance Charmaine or Brother Tui is listening, they'll probably get a little bit of a kick out of this. But we were told, just get off the bus in Kalonga and find somewhere to ask where the Faliofas are, like a little store or something. Everybody knows everybody. So, I got off the bus thinking we're going to see a 7-Eleven or Circle K or Speedway, something. There was nothing off this bus, nothing. There was a couple little shacks on one side, and on the other side was just bushes. So we're standing there. The bus takes off, dirt flying up from behind the bus, and my daughter looks at me and she says, "Now what?" And I'm like, I have no clue. And she said, "Well, how are we going to get back to town?" I don't know. So out of the bushes, out of these tall bushes where there's nothing else unless what we seen was, a couple wild hogs, and I sure didn't want them coming our way. But we saw out of these bushes this very distinguished looking Tongan older gentleman right out of the bushes, dressed in their Sunday wear. He walks right up to us and he says, "Can I help you find something?" In perfect English, he asked us this. So we explained to him what we was looking for. And so he said, "I will help you." So he stops a car, speaks to them in Tongan. He turns around to us and in English, his perfect English, says, "Get in the car. They will take you to the Faliofas." So we get in the back of this car. And now the moral of this story is not give away candy to children that you don't know or get in the back seats of strangers' cars. This is just how it worked for us. So we got in the back of this car. And when we went to take off, I turned around and that gentleman was gone, nowhere to be seen. And so we got to the Faliofas. We had a nice visit, got to pray, witness to them. And they came to service where we was at a few times. And it was a wonderful visit. We had a great time in Tonga. We was there for about 3 weeks. But what stuck with me and still has stuck with me all these years later is that God, I believe, sent a angel to us. So it takes me back to in Genesis, whenever the story is about Hagar and Abraham and Sarah, and most of us know that story. And when Sarah despised Hagar, when Hagar was despised in Sarah's eyes because of her carrying Abraham's child, Sarah put her out, basically, made her flee. She had to leave her home. And this was of no wrongdoing to Hagar, because Hagar was a servant and she done what the Lord of her household, Abraham and Sarah, bid her to do. And she found herself in this bad place, and this she fled from Sarah's face, and she found herself in the wilderness, it said. And so I felt like that's where we found me and Chelsea found ourselves. We was in a wilderness. We was in somewhere far away where we didn't know anything. But you'll find in Genesis 16 and 13, and it says this, and she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, Thou God seest me. And so those words, Thou God seest me, stuck out. God seen her in that moment that she needed him the most, when she was in the wilderness, away from the home that she ever knew. God seen her, and he came to her rescue, just like us when we were in Tonga, far away from home, and different circumstances, but still the same, where we're, needed help and didn't have anyone else to call, but God seen us. And in both instances, sent an angel. So whatever circumstance or situation you find yourself in today, there's no reason to despair or get, feel like that you're all alone or whatever. We just have the promise that God sees his children. His eye is on the righteous, and we can be sure and have faith that God does see us. And that's what you need to hold on to today. And it says in Job 34 and 21, for his eyes are upon the ways of a man, and he sees all his steps. So this morning, as you're listening, you can remember that God sees all your steps. Thank you for being with us here at PHT in the Morning, and we hope you have a wonderful day.